Egypt's Supreme Constitutional Court has ruled that the Senate and the panel, which drew up the northern country's constitution, are invalid. The top court delivered its judgment Sunday on the legitimacy of the Shura Council, the upper house which was given legislative powers last year after Parliament was dissolved. The case against the Shura Council was based on several challenges by lawyers over the laws that govern the selection of its members. Both the upper and lower houses were elected under the same electoral law, which the SCC last year deemed invalid, prompting the dissolution of Parliament. Meanwhile, the Arab National Congress held its first conference in Egypt's capital, Cairo, in years. The conference discussed the interference of foreign powers in national affairs, particularly in Arab countries that witnessed popular uprising during the past 2 years. Well, let's get more details on this developing story in Egypt, and we are now joined by CCTV's Adel Mahroui. Adel, the Supreme Constitutional Court has ruled that the Senate is invalid. First, why is this and how is this news being received?
Well, it was quite a shock because many were expecting that the court would rule that the parliament would not be dissolved, particularly that the team of the Constitutional Court's experts have advised that the new constitution seeks or gives immunity to the upper house of the parliament from any other court verdict or from being dissolved in particular. However, the court said that according to the law that the parliament or the upper house specifically of the parliament was elected upon, the elections law were not constitutional, therefore its consequences are also non-constitutional, and therefore it ruled to dissolve 1/3 of the upper house of the parliament, which basically are the independent seats, where this whole problem has also been witnessed in the lower house of the parliament. That is why it is currently dissolved in Egypt. By this court verdict, the upper house of the parliament's power to legislate has been frozen because it's missing 1/3 of its total body, which means that the elections law for the lower house of the parliament will not be formed, which delays the Egyptian parliamentary elections once more indefinitely until new laws have been formed and gained the approval of the the Constitutional Court in Egypt.
Adel, now the Arab National Congress has held its first conference in years. Now, how is the Arab National Congress, though, perceived in Egypt?
Well, the Arab National Congress has been working with its new form since 1990. It has been holding annual conferences trying to promote unity among the Arab nations in general. It has not gained widespread support from the public or even had its own influence in the political streets, yet it remains one of the indicators of how the socialist or the left wing in general proceed and develop their rights. So this is the first time it happens in Cairo for several years, and people believe it is of a specific significance.
All right, Adel Mahroui joining us there from Cairo. Well, let's stay with that story on the Arab National Congress, which held its first conference in Egypt's capital, Cairo, in years. Now, the conference discussed the interference of foreign powers in national affairs, particularly in Arab countries that witnessed a popular uprising during the past 2 years. Here is Adel Mahroui again with that report.
With no doubt, the Egyptian January Revolution made all security forces concerned with national affairs, which to an extent dropped the guard to national security threats for a while. When stability began to surf, some foreigners and foreign NGOs were chased by the authorities, accused with espionage and threatening national security. This was not the case in Egypt alone. All other Arab countries went through this turmoil, also suffered. For this reason, the Arab National Congress held its 24th session to discuss the threats of foreign intervention in the region.
Since its beginning, the Arab National Congress continued without any foreign financial support, even from an Arab nation. And at this time where billions of dollars now flow, the Arab nation is torn apart. These amounts are only searching for political streams who seek instability and destruction to our nation.
Most of the participants are from the left wings. In each conference they commemorate the Arab world's last socialist leader, the Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. Leading politicians from the Arab world joined the conference to share their country's experience in the discussions.
What has been described as the Arab Spring cannot earn such a title because of the amount of destruction and bloodshed that happened in Syria. Yemen, Egypt and all other countries can't be described as a spring. A great opportunity for international agenda existed, although this was not part of the revolution.
The problem is not with the revolutions, but foreign powers, particularly the United States and some Western countries. They try to make sure the revolutions will turn into their own benefits. Their influence still persists, and now all civil powers must stand together against that threat.
The concept of the Congress began in 1913 with the first Arab Congress held in Paris. But with the rise of national movements in the region, the concept developed to the Arab National Congress in Tunisia in 1990. It aims to create popular awareness about the importance of Arab unity. All participants agreed on one of the main reasons for foreign influence on national affairs to continue. It is the division among the political lines in each of these Arab countries. And they warned, the longer the division continues, the graver the consequences. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Japan says it will give $1 billion in aid to help stabilize the Islamist-infested Sahel region in Africa, months after the deaths of 10 Japanese in a hostage crisis there. The money is a part of a $14 billion aid package to be given to Africa over 5 years, which Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced at the start of the Tokyo International Conference on African Development. CCTV's Maria Galang with more.
The $1 billion aid package is aimed at bringing peace and stability to the Islamist-infested Sahel region of Africa. The money is part of a $14 billion aid package to be given to Africa over 5 years, which Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced on Saturday at the start of the Tokyo International Conference on African Development. This follows the deaths of 10 Japanese citizens who were held in a hostage crisis at a gas plant in Algeria. The 4-day crisis ended with bodies and blood when Algerian commandos stormed the plant. Graphic images and accounts that emerged in the days after the assault invoked executions and sent a collective shudder through Japan, whose energy and infrastructure firms are active in the region.
In January of this year, a hostage incident took place in Algeria, imparting a tremendous shock to the Japanese people. Throughout this incident, Japan came to solemnly realize once again that stability in the Sahel region, which connects North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, is indispensable to the prosperity of Northern and Western Africa.
Despite the Japanese public's wariness of unrest in far-off and little-known places, government, industry and academic leaders warned the resource-poor archipelago cannot withdraw its energy interests from areas like the Sahel. Instead, Tokyo must take a lead in helping to create stability through social programs and development that can divert and tackle unemployment and poverty that experts say leads to extremism.
Le Japon, où nous nous trouvons aujourd'hui, symbolise.
Japan, where we are today, symbolizes the victory of nations over nature and temperaments, the victory of nations for peace, security and development.
Pour la paix et la sécurité, ainsi que le développement.
Japan will also support the training of 2,000 people in counter-terrorism and security maintenance activities. But as well as muscle, he said, there had to be an effort to improve governance, boost schemes to counter food shortages and provide work for the unemployed. Maria Galang, CCTV.
And to stay with us here on Africa Live, are still ahead on the program. A date for Zimbabwe. The court orders Zimbabwe poll to be held at the end of July. And authorities in the Central African Republic seek to arrest former President Francois Bozize.
Breaking news. Global trends. CCTV News brings you stories with the different aspects of Africa in the international content. With our reporters across Africa and all over the world, we'll tell you about the real Africa and how it impacts the world. Africa Live, every day, only on CCTV News.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Now, Zimbabwe's Supreme Court has ordered elections in the country to be held by July the 31st. The ruling brings a resolution to the issue of poll dates, which had divided the coalition government. President Robert Mugabe had wanted elections on June the 29th, while Prime Minister Tsvangirai favored a date in September. CCTV's Farai Mwakutuya has the details.
The applicant claimed the country could not be run without the existence of parliament, whose mandate expires on June 29th. The decision is believed to favor President Mugabe, who wanted early polls. However, Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai's party has accepted the ruling, but insists reforms to ensure a free and fair election should be made. Those who had proposed a later date argued the recently passed constitution needs to be implemented first. However, legal experts say this cannot stand in the way of elections.
What was before the Supreme Court was simply that there must be an election. And those arguments were actually raised in the Supreme Court. Those we were arguing that there is need for 4 months. All that has already been taken into account. So what is important is to go by the judgment.
Experts say once a new government has been elected, it will have the responsibility of implementing the country's new charter. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The new government of the Central African Republic has issued an international arrest warrant against deposed former President Francois Bozize, accusing him of crimes against humanity and incitement to genocide, according to the state prosecutor. Now, thousands of fighters from the Seleka rebel coalition, angered by what they said was Bozize's refusal to honor an earlier peace deal, marched into the capital Bangui on March the 24th, forcing him to flee to neighboring Cameroon. The mineral-rich nation's new leaders opened an investigation last month into alleged crimes committed during his 10-year reign. Prosecutor Alain Tolmo told journalists in Bangui that the crimes uncovered by the investigation fall under the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. However, he did not say if the government planned to ask that Bozize be tried before The Hague. Bozize is also being sought for alleged economic crimes. 97 soldiers from Sierra Leone deployed to Mogadishu arrived in the Somali capital on Saturday. The soldiers, who are part of AMISOM, are currently in Sierra Leone to provide reinforcement to the other African soldiers in the East African country. Before the deployment, Sierra Leone had 850 soldiers located in Somalia's Lower Juba region, where AMISOM's Kenya Defense Force has liberated large areas, including the administrative port city of Kismayu. The deployment comes as the Somali government continues to face insecurity challenges.
Jubaland it will be controlled by KDF and Sierra Leone. So these new soldiers will be deployed in that area to augment the forces there. So their work is to go and consolidate the achievements already achieved on the ground and to make sure that we stabilize the area.
It makes me feel good because I believe it is payback time. We had a bitter and brutal war for about 10 years in Sierra Leone. The war ended in 2002. And all of you are aware of what role sister African countries played in bringing peace into Sierra Leone. So if we are doing the same thing to Somalia, we believe it is a payback time. And we also pray that the Somali National Force will also do likewise in another troubled sister country in the future.
Equatorial Guinea's President Teodoro Obiang Nguema's political party overwhelmingly won last week's local and parliamentary elections in a widely expected victory for Africa's longest-serving leader. Obiang's party claimed an absolute majority in all districts, according to the presidential office, without giving detailed figures. The polls have been denounced as a sham by the opposition in the small central West African nation, the continent's third largest oil producer, which has been under Obiang's rule for 34 years. The statement added that the opposition Convergence for Social Democracy Party took just one seat in the lower house of parliament, one in the Senate, and 5 local council seats. 71-year-old Obiang came to power in the former Spanish colony after toppling his uncle in 1979 and after having him shot. The music industry in South Sudan, like many other sectors, is struggling to establish itself. Lual Duwal has returned from the United States with a mission to help that happen. He uses his lyrics to press the authorities to develop the country at a faster rate.
He calls himself Lual, meaning lyrically untouchable African legend. Born to New York-based diplomat parents, South Sudanese rapper Lual Duwal returned to his home country in 2009 to take part in his country's journey to freedom. This after the oil-producing country won its independence in a referendum in 2011. Lual was part of an exodus of hundreds of thousands of South Sudanese who left the lives they built in the diaspora to return to their native home country and play part in its construction.
Children's bellies still big from starvation, flies stuck on their face.
But the hope and excitement Lual and many other South Sudanese felt when they first arrived has not been easy to maintain. And the reality of just how far the country needs to go is what feeds Lual's powerful lyrics.
I mean, there's no infrastructure, there's no electricity, there's no water, there's no schools, there's no proper health care, you know. It's the backbone of every nation, but they're not present right now here in South Sudan, and that's what everyone is complaining about. You know, the security is not even very tight, people are dying every day, people are getting killed. And the people who are doing the killings, they're never caught, they're never arrested, you know, things like that.
One of his songs is a letter to the late SPLA commander John Garang, who was at the forefront of the country's freedom struggle before he died in a plane crash in 2005.
I'm writing a letter to Dr. John asking him, you know, all the people that have passed away during the struggle, you know, because this was not an individual struggle or it was all of our struggle. You know, all of us were in diaspora, we were living in xenophobia, we've been traumatized through this war. So now we're back here and now they're governing us. And all I'm saying is this what all these people died for? Is this what all the trauma we went through so we can live in this kind of life?
Decades of civil war and economic crisis mean that South Sudan has to be built from scratch. Life expectancy is just under 50 years old. Only a quarter of adults can read, and the new nation sits near the bottom of almost every development index. With independence, however, South Sudan has tried to explore and define itself, despite facing many challenges. Lual is determined to use music as a tool for development.
Through his rap, you feel that the things which is happening in South Sudan, you feel it through his rap. So you can feel what he's talking about is exactly. So I think just he's special, seriously he's special because he's talking about things he sees.
However, even with a message that resonates amongst many South Sudanese youth, artists are unlikely to go far in an industry that lacks resources and expertise to effectively tap into their potential.
It's a new market. It's not a market that is not there yet, and it's for us to build it. So that's really the only challenges that we face. There's no equipment, there's no laws protecting the artists, there's no equipment, and yeah, those are the challenges.
I'm from South Sudan where major generals inspire dudes.
Lual released a song in 2011 titled Scattered Overseas, urging other South Sudanese to return and help build a new nation. He has produced 3 albums and is currently working on a new one due for release next month. Alan Kiprop for CCTV.